Christmas, and thank you so much for joining me back here. How are you? I'm good. 2020 was the year of rereads for me, and that's kind of what I've been calling it. However, I did read some new books that I really enjoyed that I want to talk about today. So today we're going to be doing my top 5 books of 2020. These are not new books that were released in 2020. These were just books that I read and were my favorites. Let me just preface by saying that this isn't in any order or anything like that. It's kind of in the order that I read them throughout the year, because I'm just going through my Goodreads and noting which ones were my favorites. So this isn't a ranking type of video. So this first book that I mentioned won't be either my last or my favorite. It's just one of my favorites, if that makes sense. So the first book is A Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is an adult dystopian novel in which this kind of radical religious group kind of takes over the country, and all of the women are forced into different caste systems, essentially. And in this one, we follow a handmaid whose sole job is to bear children, pretty much. There's a fertility issue in this world, and men aren't blamed for anything, really. So everything that goes wrong is pretty much the woman's fault. And so if a couple can't have a baby, they blame it on the woman. They send in a handmaid, and hopefully she can bear a child for the two of them. It's a pretty popular book, especially since they made the Hulu series. I haven't watched the series, but I did really enjoy this book. I got this, I think, on Prime. I think it was a free book on Prime that I downloaded as an ebook. And it was one of those deals where I downloaded it to my phone just because it was free. I wasn't really that excited to read it or anything like that, but I finished what I was reading. I didn't really have time to go look for something else, but I did want to read something. This was already on my phone. I started reading it and blew me away. It was so good. It's not a happy story. Just preface with that. If you're looking for a happy story, this is not it, but it is very interesting and I recommend it. This year I also read through the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. Now, I'm not going to put the Chronicles of Narnia as one of my favorites because, to be honest, they're not. I don't have a nostalgia factor attached to these, which is kind of why I think a lot of people enjoy these as much as they do. As kind of that outsider who doesn't have any factor attached to these like that, they were just okay. However, I did really enjoy book 1, The Magician's Nephew. It's kind of a preface to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It kind of explains how Narnia came to be, how it was created. It's a little bit of Aslan's backstory. It's basically backstory, which I'm a sucker for. Anytime there's backstory, I'm just like eating it up. Give it to me, give it to me. So I really enjoyed The Magician's Nephew. And just honorable mention in terms of Chronicles of Narnia, I really enjoyed Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which I don't hear many people talk about, but I really like that one. My next pick is one that people either love or they hate. I'm on the former side. Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. This was my most anticipated release of the year. I was a total twihard in like middle school, high school. This is one of the series that contribute to my love of reading. So there definitely is a nostalgia factor for this series for me. And this is my new favorite in the saga. I really enjoyed Edward's perspective. I think you get a lot more detail in terms of why he behaves the way that he behaves. I really enjoyed getting a look into other people's minds, what they're thinking. Kind of makes the rest of the story make a little bit more sense. There are some things in here that I think Stephanie Meyer added afterwards, just kind of as an afterthought, that when you read Twilight itself, there's no really inclination that that's what's happening behind the scenes in Twilight, but it's in Midnight Sun. So I feel like there are some things that she added afterwards. I'm not mad about it, but it is something that I noticed. Overall, it's my new favorite in the saga. Whenever I reread the saga, I'm going to skip Twilight. Don't care about it. I'm just going to read this one for the first book. My next one I'm kind of just going to group together as a series because I kind of have mixed feelings about it, but it is still one of my favorites of the year. The Becca Cooper Trilogy by Tamora Pierce. We have Terrier, Bloodhound, and Mastiff. I will say that I think Mastiff was my favorite, but I include the whole series because I don't like the end of Mastiff. And I really think this would maybe be one of my favorite series if it wasn't for the ending of this book. In my head, I kind of just ignore it and kind of forget that it happened so I can just enjoy it. I do plan on making a review video for these eventually. I still think it's definitely worth reading, even though I didn't like the ending of this one. It was a lot of fun. It's not very popular, so I'll just explain it very quickly. This follows Rebecca Cooper, who is a provost guard, which basically means she's like a cop, policeman, detective. These are basically mystery novels, detective novels. similar, somewhere on that cusp. And each book follows a different crime that she and her partners are trying to solve. Basically it. I will say the language is a little difficult to get used to at first, but once you do get used to it, once you become accustomed to it, you kind of fly through these, and they're a lot of fun. I wish it hadn't ended the way that it did, but it did. The last one I'm going to mention is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This is an adult fantasy novel. A lot of people describe it as a D&D campaign. I've never played D&D. I don't really know. I will say that there are references to a bunch of different creatures that I didn't really get, and I felt like if I had played D&D that maybe I would know them a little bit more. So since I didn't know them, I would often go look them up to see what they were, and it would kind of take me out of the story. So maybe if you play D&D, you will be more immersed in this than I was. There are also apparently a lot of rock band references that I didn't get, but I don't feel like that hindered my enjoyment for the book at all. This is a lighthearted fantasy. There are some heavier moments within it, but overall it's happy. It's a fun read. If you're looking to get into adult fantasy without really like grim dark fantasy or heavy high fantasy, I would recommend this. I don't know if I would consider it high fantasy. It's definitely not urban fantasy. It doesn't take place in this world at all. There's not really a complex magic system or anything like that though. So I don't know what I would really categorize it as. Either way, good starting point if you ask me. Oh, I've had Sam Slobber on my shirt for this whole video and it looks kind of weird. Dang. Anyways, those are all of my favorites from this past year for 2020. This was actually a little hard because since a lot of my reads were rereads, I didn't really have a whole lot of new favorites. I really had to struggle for the last one. I did enjoy Kings of the Wild, but like when I think of 2020, it's not like that's one of my favorites. You know what I'm saying? Looking back though, it was, but it was a little difficult to kind of come up with what my favorites were since so many of my reads were rereads. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe down below and leave a comment. Let me know what your favorites were for 2020. Maybe I'll try to check them out in 2021. You guys are awesome. I am so thankful for you. And we'll meet back here next time, guys. See ya!